I want to get into something for one moment, and that is about critics and criticism, and about God. God, critics, and criticism. You know, we can think of God in many different ways. We can conceive of God as in different ways. You know, some people can look at God as the creator, or God as somebody who's going to do you favors. You know, he's like Vito Corleone. Or you can look at God as a critic. There's so many different ways you can look at God. God is something that you can look at in different ways. God is a critic. He criticizes. He looks at your life and he criticizes it. He says, no, I don't like the way you live. Thumbs down. You know, I give it 2 stars, and I give your life 3.5 stars. You know, it was okay, but at the end it kind of was a little bit of a disappointment. But still, I still recommend it. You know, it's like the God is recommended whether you go to heaven or whether you go to hell. You know, whatever. So he's a critic. And I tend to think that this is what I want to focus on. God is the critic. You see, people are critics. And that's how people understand things. From a point of view of being criticized. You know, if you're sitting there masturbating, for example, God is looking at that and like, oh, no, that's wrong. I give that thumbs down. You know, but what if he's a kinky guy? And he kind of goes, hey, I give that a thumbs up. Hey, you get your technique is magnificent. You know, it could be like that. You know, people could look at it that way. God could be like that. He could be a kinky God. He might like it when you do that. Like, ooh, the way you do that. Ooh, you were moaning and groaning in pleasure. That was great. That was wonderful. I give that a thumbs up. You know? Seriously. It could be that way. How do you know? People, what it is God is whatever people are conscious of God being. Whatever you decide he is, and how his temperament, it always reflects the temperament of the people of whatever time people created God, or whatever way in which people think of a God. You know, it's kind of like this too when we think of other people. Especially people who aren't there, either physically because they're in another place, or because they've died, you know. We think of what somebody would have wanted. Well, Joe would have wanted me to have that coffee maker. No, because you wanted to have that coffee maker. You know, Joe might have said, oh, no, I would never get that motherfucking coffee maker if my life depended on it. But, you know, you want it, so therefore Joe would have wanted me to have it. He would have wanted me to have it. But he's not here to say it, so I know what he would have wanted. Of course. You know, yeah, that's right. That's the way it works. People do that all the time. Let me see what time it is. Okay, I got about 5 minutes. Anyway, that's the way people do things. And I know that that's how it works. That's how people do things. They decide how things are. And then they say that that's what God would have wanted. That's what all these churches do. That's what, when I think about the organization, I used to be in the Jehovah's Witnesses. The guy who started that organization, way back in 1872, what was his name? Hayes or Taze or whatever. He decided that how things were. And he said, well, that's what God wants. God doesn't want you to take a blood transfusion because he doesn't like blood transfusions. And he doesn't like this. And the organization doesn't like that. And although he might not have come up with the blood transfusion, because I don't think they were doing them in 1870 something. But at some point, whenever blood transfusions actually became a thing that was done medically, probably, you know, I kind of believe that their blood transfusion no wasn't because it was in the Bible, but because they're probably, in the early days, people might not have understood much about how to do it. I mean, they knew that you could transfuse blood from one human being to another and it could save a person, but they also knew things could go wrong. People would die from it. So that kind of became a superstition because people didn't understand. And then somebody discovered that that people have different blood types. There's A, B, you know, they discovered that. Then they were doing that and it was okay, but then there were problems. Then they discovered something called the Rh factor, which is based on doing experiments with rhesus monkeys. That's where the Rh comes from. And then, you know, but see, that's the thing. People use the Bible. Whenever something happens, you look to the Bible for some explanation. And you can find it. I guarantee anything you can find an explanation in the Bible for it, because it's open to all kinds of interpretations. So a lot of that stuff is not what God thought or what God believes, depending on how you look at God. God is really a matter of how you choose to look at it. I'm not going to say that I don't believe in God or that I'm an atheist, because I'm not. But I think God, it really is a matter of the consciousness of each individual. That's what it comes down to. It comes down to the consciousness of each individual. What you think, your personal fears and your thoughts and your misunderstandings of the world. If you want to understand and think like God, learn more. Because, you think about God. God, being all-knowing, obviously would never change his mind. But human beings do as they learn. Because the one thing about us as humans is we have the capacity to learn. We can do something God can't do. Think about it. If God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-everything, one thing God can never do is learn. God can never learn. A human being can learn. I'm not God, so I'm always learning things. And as I learn things, I interpret things. There's a point to all this. But this point is something you have to learn yourself. I can learn things. I can always learn. I can always gain more information. What I might have judged something one way, when new information comes, I may judge it a different way. And then I learn some more information. I may judge it back another way. And I may judge it in still another way I didn't even think of, as I learn even more. Our judgments, it's like back in the days when people did surgery. In the early days, they would do surgery and they wouldn't even wash the instruments because they didn't know. Once they discovered bacteria could be transferred from one person to another, or viruses or anything else, they start cleaning the instruments, cleaning their hands, washing. You make a different judgment. You do something. In the future, we may learn even more things, and we make even other judgments about how we're going to do something. What could help someone to recover from an illness? We learn even better ways. The treatment of diabetes has improved a lot. Even in my lifetime, from the time when my father was first diagnosed to now, as we learn more. See, God could never learn new things, whereas humans can. That's the difference between a human and God. God can't learn, humans can. That's all I'm saying. That's my real point. I'm not a critic, because whatever criticism I have, like sometimes I even wonder, and I should have actually asked Roger Ebert. I did have a chance to meet him once. And I had an opportunity to ask a question, but I didn't, because he was in a thing, where he was asking questions. And now that I think about it, and nobody has asked him this. He's like, not that I've ever seen or heard, but to ask him, have you ever seen a movie? And I'm sure he probably has asked this. He has been asked this and has probably answered it. But have you ever seen a movie in the past, 20 years ago, and you gave it a thumbs down? But then when you thought about it later, you realized that was a really good movie. I should have gave it a thumb. But, I'm sure he would probably admit he doesn't regret what he did in the past. But, yes, I know he's changed his mind on certain movies, because there were movies he gave bad reviews to, but then he thought about them later. You see it a second time, you might think different. I've actually felt that way about movies. I can give you one example in particular. When I saw The Godfather Part 2, I actually didn't like that movie. I did not like it at all. I was actually bored through it. And some people probably still would feel that way. But today when I watch it, I love that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, because I realized as I learned more and looked at the movie differently, I see it completely differently. Same thing with the movie Altered States. I actually did not like it the first time I saw it. Now it's probably my single favorite best movie. I love that movie. My favorite movie, not best movie, because I didn't make it. But see, my criticism has changed. God, the critic, would never change. Whatever God has already decided or thought or criticized, or maybe he's not even making judgments at all. Maybe that's the highest level you can get to, is not judging anything, but just accepting things. And we, the people, human beings, are the ones running around judging each other. But anyway, that's my point. That's all I had to say about that.